Why do you care about waking up, about reaching enlightenment, having an awakening experience? Why do you care about reaching Christ consciousness, Buddha nature? Why do you give a shit? Now, if you're anything like me, you probably convinced yourself that you really give a fuck about finding the truth, about getting to the bottom of what's happening here. What is life exactly? What's the nature of my existence? Who am I? And you know what? I don't know you. Maybe that's actually true for you. Maybe that's why you care. But I find in my experience and the experience of people I know that I talk to that this compulsive need to seek something spiritually, to get to the point where I recognize in completion, without a fucking shadow of a doubt, that I am consciousness, that I am not a small self that believes it's within a bag of skin walking through a world. I find that the need to become enlightened, to seek that, it's because there's something here that I don't want to deal with. I don't want to feel. I don't want to see. I don't want to acknowledge. So it's easier to believe that I'm going to get to some end point, some line in the sand, where once I cross, I will no longer be vulnerable to pain. I will no longer have to believe anything matters, have to believe in the things that my mind says, have to feel or even be affected by the fact that I feel emotions and sensations that I don't want to feel, right? I'm going to become invulnerable once I cross that line, but in a way that's, full of love. It's almost like we believe in some type of eternal holy numbness, or that we're just going to be unaffected by the trivialities of human life. And again, I'm not omnipotent. I'm not all knowing. Some people say that they have experiences like that they're in some type of state of consciousness where nothing affects them anymore because it's all like a dream. And maybe that's true for them. But what seems more true to me and more worth talking about is that people seek that state to get away from something that's already here, to get away from something that they don't want to be with or acknowledge. So, is seeking enlightenment, is trying to cross that imaginary finish line that we don't really know is there, if we're honest, right? Is trying to do that really the most effective way to deal with that which I don't want? Is it the best way? Or is it kind of like the last frontier? I don't know if that's the right phrase, but is it like the last thing that I do that I can chase? The last is it the last carrot that I can believe in, right? Because maybe I've had the carrots of I want to be famous, I want to be good looking and attractive, and I want to have sex with the most people, or I want to have the hottest boyfriend or girlfriend, or I, I don't know, I want to be an athlete, I want to be a musician, I want to be something, and when I get there, then I want to be um a professional. I want to rise to the top of the corporate ladder and make the most money. And then once I do that, I'll finally be safe to be myself. I'll finally be safe to admit what's true for me, to have and show the emotions that are really here under the surface that not even I want to admit to, that I hide from myself. Maybe once I cross that finish line, right? And it's just that the finish line used to be other things. It used to be the worldly stuff. And now it's some highfalutin spiritual idea of enlightenment. That's the new finish line. And this is not some nothing matters, you're already enlightened message. No, that ain't it. That's not what this is. Because that becomes another fucking finish line, doesn't it? Man, yeah. If only I was just could recognize that I'm already it. Oh God, I did it again. I went off thinking about things again. Oh fuck, I'm doing it wrong. Okay, just take a deep breath. Notice that you're already awareness. I'm already awareness. I'm already awareness. I'm already awareness. Oh, am I supposed to be thinking about it, or is that not? It's the same fucking mess, man. Like it's another carrot to chase. And I think for a lot of people, spirituality, it could be the last carrot. Not in an ultimate way, really, but the last really big carrot that we can fully believe in. That we can really put all our chips in the middle of the table and say, I'm all in on enlightenment. I'm all in on spiritual awakening. I'm going to get there or die trying. And what's nefarious about it is that we tell ourselves that we want to do it for its own sake. I just really want to know the truth. That's what I care about more than anything else. And it's probably bullshit. You're probably shitting yourself. Because the truth of the matter is not that you care about truth above all else. The truth of the matter is you care about survival. Your self, your thought and emotional patterns are just trying to survive. Ultimately, because they want to protect the self, they want to protect the sense of I, the one who's walking through the world, who's vulnerable to attack and to criticism. These patterns want to protect that one. They're actually innocent, but they're unskillful. They do it in ways that maybe are kind of outdated, right? And they try to protect us from threats that might not exist anymore, like the environment we grew up in, the parents we had, someone who abused us when we were a kid who's not around anymore, who's no longer a threat. These patterns are trying to still protect us. And they do it in ways that are questionably skillful, right? Their skillfulness is questionable, is what I mean to say. They're they're not doing it in a way that's really serving us anymore. So, what happens, as best I can tell, is that it's like layers of these patterns. It's painful to try to run from our experience, to not experience and be able to show an emotion that's really happening for us. This inauthenticity is painful, but we choose it over being destroyed. We choose it over being humiliated. We choose it because it's safe. It's safer to be inauthentic. At least it seems to be. Or it was true at one time, but now it's no longer true. And that pain of inauthenticity sometimes requires another compensation, right? Another pattern of thought and emotion to compensate for it. And maybe that requires another layer. And we build up this detritus of self, of patterns of emotions and thoughts that we take to be who we are, right? And now I guess I'm talking more in line with what you're probably used to hearing. But getting to an endpoint, a line in the sand, doesn't make that shit go away. And doesn't mean you're no longer going to give a fuck about it, that you're no longer going to be affected, that you're no longer going to identify with it. Doesn't mean that. Yeah. What's more likely is either you'll never get to the place you're trying to get to, and you'll just eternally be fucking frustrated and beating yourself up like you already are, which is another pattern of thought and emotion, right? If you beat yourself up enough, maybe you'll finally get there. And that's a way to protect yourself, to make yourself safe, because you're trying to push yourself towards it, towards that finish line, right? So, yeah, what's more likely is you'll either keep beating yourself up, trying to get there, or maybe you actually have some type of experience of awakening, and then you find that all these emotional thought patterns just come rushing back in eventually. Maybe you have a break. Oh, thank God. But all the patterns come rushing back. They don't just die off. They don't just stop. They don't just go, oh, okay, my job is done. This individual I've been trying to protect doesn't exist, so there's no reason for me to try to keep them safe. I'm just going to dissolve into thin air spontaneously once and for all. Uh-uh. Doesn't seem like it goes that way for the majority of people, if anybody. So, why can't we be honest about that? Because if we're honest about it, What are our choices? Are we going to give up the enlightenment dream? Are we going to give up the cheese chasing, the carrot chasing? Are we going to give that up? What do I have to feel if I stop chasing enlightenment? What do I have to come to terms with? What do I have to acknowledge? What do I have to risk? Who am I going to be? What do I have to show people? Am I going to become exposed? Are they going to see who I really am? God, I would love that. And I'm fucking terrified of it. So, what's really happening for you? That's the question. What's really driving your search for enlightenment or awakening? What's behind that, really? Is it because you're just such a disciple of the truth? You just care so much about the truth. Oh, you're so holy, you're so noble. Is it because of that? Or is it because you're in pain and you think that you're going to get there? And once you do, all of this shit will fall away and you'll no longer be able to be hurt. You'll recognize you're not someone who can be hurt. You're everything, you're infinite consciousness. It's probably the second one. It was for me. Hell, it still is for me from time to time. Sometimes I watch something about enlightenment or awakening and I get sucked into it. Happens. Doesn't have the same pull. I don't start reading endless books, watching endless videos anymore. There's still a little bit of a hook there, but it's not the way it once was. And I guess that's the other part of this message is that there's actually hope. There's hope. Because if you start learning how to be with yourself, actually, as you are, not as a way to get somewhere fucking else, not because someone told you you should, but just because you care about yourself and you want to see what's true for you, not what's ultimately, objectively the truth, not some big T truth, but just what's true for you, what's real for you. If you become curious about that and you start having some compassion for yourself, not because you're supposed to, but because it naturally arises over time, over that illusory thing called time that doesn't exist. If you're willing to do that, things get softer, they get gentler, they get easier. They start to make more sense. You stop beating yourself up so goddamn much. You become nicer to yourself, you become nicer to others. Life gets simpler. There's hope. But it doesn't come from trying to pressure yourself, to push yourself towards something you think you're supposed to want. Be real with yourself as best you can. Just take that inward look. Try to just turn inward. Say, what's really going on here? And the other thing of this is that we're hurt so much by people. And the easiest way to deal with that is pretend that people don't exist. Just the same illusion, more of the same self-illusion carried on in others. That's an easier alternative than to actually deal with the dynamics as they show up, to honor the patterns of emotion and thought, to listen to those, to appreciate them, to understand why they're here. That just sounds more complex, doesn't it, than I'm just going to believe that there's no such thing as people, as selves. I'm just going to believe that. It's so much simpler. Life is still hard, still challenging. Not every moment, but often. But it's so much simpler and so much clearer than it was before. When I was believing in a state called enlightenment that I couldn't see, feel, or touch, that I had no evidence of being real. You know, there's someone I can think of. I might even consider her a mentor of mine, who I'm inclined to believe was in some other state of existence. Full blown enlightenment. If anyone I've ever met or talked to had that, it's probably her. But how does that help me? Because all that could really do for me, believing in that state, all it could really do is reinforce the mechanism by which I pressure myself, by which I try to force myself into having a particular type of experience that I think I'm supposed to have. It makes the rest of human experience not okay. Which is what I already think is the case, isn't it? I think my experience, I think that I am not okay as I am. So I try to invalidate that and validate only this one particular state that I really can't force myself into, right? Think about the logic of it. The whole philosophy tells you that you're not a person, that you don't have fucking control, and yet you're going to try to control yourself into that particular state that, if we're honest, it looks like only very few people achieve. If we believe that they actually achieve what they said they did, right? But no, I'm going to keep pushing myself towards that vaulted state instead of being honest about what's happening with me, being honest about why it matters to me so goddamn much, being honest about what I'm trying to get away from, what I believe I wouldn't have to experience if I could just get there. That's the truth of it, isn't it?